"You can sit in the back. This dinner is for family." That's what Tinsley said to me. Her voice was sweet, almost apologetic, but the words sliced clean through my chest. She didn't even look at me when she said it, just waved a dismissive hand toward the kitchen as if I were part of the staff. Her mother, all pearls and posture, smirked with a sip of wine. And my son, my William, he just looked down at his plate, said nothing. I had spent my life building a home from nothing but worn hands and second chances. My late husband and I gave everything so William could live a better life. And here I was, pretending to be the poor, uneducated widow Tinsley believed me to be. Just a trial, I told myself, a little test before I put anything in her hands. But I didn't expect this. The sting of those words, "This is for family," made me feel like I never existed, not as a mother, not as a woman, just a burden in cheap shoes. If you've ever been disrespected by someone you love, this story will speak to your heart. When I married James Rose, all I had was a second-hand dress and a name I carried with pride. Lillian Rose used to mean something. He used to say, "A rose never begs to be seen. It blooms quietly and still commands beauty." He made me believe I was worth something, even when we had nothing. After he passed, I kept blooming for William. I cleaned houses during the day and sewed hems at night, my fingers raw, my eyes tired. But every penny was for William's future. I never remarried, never once thought of myself first. My joy came from giving, warm meals, pressed shirts, gentle reminders that love lived in details. When William met Tinsley, I was hopeful. She was ambitious, polished, and came from a family that dined with silver cutlery. I admit I felt small around her. She looked at me like I was part of some forgotten past, something she didn't want dragging behind her future. Still, I smiled. I bought her flowers on birthdays, watched her favorite films, even tried wearing beige like she did. "You don't need to do all this," she'd say with that polite smile that never touched her eyes. But I wanted to be accepted. Now, sitting in her family's lavish home, treated like a ghost, I couldn't help but wonder, when did I stop being William's mother and start being someone's embarrassment? In my purse, folded like a secret, was the document that could change everything. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I saw it before I heard it. The little silver fork on the edge of the table. It was different from the others. No floral design, no engraving, just plain, thin, and bent slightly at the end. Mine. I had brought my own fork. Tinsley's mother, Evelyn, had accidentally forgotten to set a place for me. When I mentioned it softly, Evelyn laughed. "Oh, darling, we just assumed you'd brought your own habits." And then she winked. So I reached into my bag, pulled out the fork I always carried, for bus rides, for long days with packed bread, for the times I ate alone behind other people's curtains while scrubbing their lives back to shine. I placed it on my plate with dignity, but inside something cracked. That fork had fed me through mourning and motherhood. It had carved slices of cake for William's birthdays when we couldn't afford presents. That little bent fork had survived more than Tinsley's designer cutlery ever would. Evelyn whispered something to Tinsley. They laughed. William didn't laugh, but he didn't defend me either. It's strange how silence can humiliate louder than words. A mother waits for her son to speak, to protect, to remember. But William just looked away, as if pretending I wasn't there would make it easier for him. I looked at my reflection in the silver pitcher beside the bread basket. Tired eyes, thin face, dignity barely holding, a bent fork, and an aching heart. They handed me a paper napkin. Everyone else had linen, embroidered, folded like swans. I got a napkin that felt like it came from a roadside diner. I almost smiled. Almost. Evelyn said, "We didn't know you were coming, dear," even though I'd been invited 3 weeks ago. William had said, "They want to meet you properly, Ma. Be nice, all right?" I remember holding the phone tightly, heart leaping at the thought. I had chosen my dress with care. Modest, clean, a faded blue James once said, made my eyes look like sky. But now, Evelyn dabbed her lips delicately with her monogrammed cloth, while mine tore on the edge after one gentle touch. I held it together, quite literally. Pressed the paper square in my lap and told myself this didn't matter. But it did. It told me I wasn't worth the laundry. I didn't say a word. Not about the napkin, not about the way Tinsley spoke in code, mentioning luxury trips and people who still use coupons, glancing at me like I was a walking discount. I stayed still, like the locket around my neck. William never noticed it, never asked why I always wore it. Inside was a picture of him at 10 years old, holding a frog, laughing like the world hadn't yet changed him. Maybe I kept wearing it because I missed that version of him, and maybe because I was starting to grieve someone who was still alive. "Let's raise a glass," Evelyn said, her voice clear and cold like a bell in winter. "To the union of two beautiful families, and to Tinsley, who elevates everything she touches." Everyone clinked glasses, smiles, nods, laughter, but no one mentioned my name, not once. I sat at the far end of the table, my chair wobbling slightly on the uneven rug, the only one without champagne. Evelyn had poured me water in a mismatched glass. I held it anyway, lifted it with trembling fingers, not to join the toast, but to hide the heat rising in my face. William didn't notice. He was too busy leaning into Tinsley, eyes full of pride that wasn't mine anymore. "Do you know what it's like to be erased from your own child's story?" I looked down, tracing the rim of my glass with a thumb that once wiped fevered foreheads and buttoned his little coats on snowy mornings. I remembered carrying him through flu nights, spooning soup into his mouth when he was too weak to eat. Now he was toasting to family, and I was watching from the shadows. Tinsley caught my gaze and held it, not with warmth, with triumph, as if saying, "See, this is my table now." And in that moment, something shifted in me, not anger, not yet, but a kind of awakening. They thought I was no one, that I came with nothing, but they didn't know what I was still holding. After the toast, dessert arrived, a grand multi-tiered lemon cake with sugared orchids, a flourish clearly meant to impress. Tinsley smiled like she'd baked it herself. "I hope it's not too tangy for your palate, Mrs. Rose," she said across the table, loud enough for everyone to hear. The way she said Mrs. Rose, it wasn't respect. It was mockery wearing pearls. I met her gaze. "I've tasted sourer things," I said softly, then looked back at my plate. It landed like a feather, but it cut like a knife. A hush followed, just a moment, enough to feel the shift in the air. Tinsley laughed it off, of course, but her eyes flickered. She didn't like to be touched where her charm wore thin. I took a bite. The cake was beautiful, but empty. No warmth, no memory, just layers, like her. William looked at me then, really looked. "You okay, Ma?" he asked, voice low. "Too late, my son." I nodded. In that quiet moment, the locket around my neck felt heavier. I reached for it without thinking, held it in my palm. That photo of young William, smiling, tooth missing, dirt on his cheek. A boy who once believed his mother could fix anything. Where had that boy gone? Where had I gone? It was the first time I wondered if maybe I had allowed myself to become invisible, out of love, out of sacrifice, but not anymore. After dinner, Evelyn offered a tour of their estate, long corridors, silent rooms that smelled of polish and money. I walked behind the group like a shadow, shoes soft on the carpet. Tinsley clung to William's arm like a ribbon tied too tight. In the hallway, a wall full of framed family photos caught my eye. All Tinsley's people. Baby pictures, graduations, ski trips, perfectly captured smiles under chandeliers. Her world was proudly displayed. I stopped in front of a silver frame. William, mid-laugh, tuxedoed, holding Tinsley's hand at their engagement party, But something was missing. Me. I had stood right beside him that night. I remembered the dress I wore, navy with a lace collar, because it was the last one James had given me before he passed. We had taken a photo together, me and William, before the party began. He said I looked like a first lady. That photo wasn't here. I scanned every frame. Not one of me. "Do you like the wall?" Tinsley asked suddenly at my side. Her tone was sweet, but her eyes gleamed. I nodded. "It's lovely, just selective." She tilted her head. "Not every photo matches the decor, you understand." I understood. Decor. That's what I'd become. Something that didn't fit. But in my bag, I carried something else. A worn envelope, sealed and waiting. A paper that didn't care about decor, about money, about arrogance. And when the time was right, I'd let it speak. Later that evening, when the laughter drifted into the living room and champagne flowed like a river, I slipped into the kitchen for a glass of water. The silence was warm there, familiar. It smelled of rosemary and lemon, like something real. That's when I heard her voice. Tinsley. She didn't know I was there. I was behind the pantry door, out of sight. She was speaking to Evelyn. "She's just not our kind of people," Tinsley said, almost with a sigh. "William feels sorry for her, that's all. But once the estate gets settled, she'll fade out like she's supposed to." Evelyn chuckled, clinking ice in her glass. "Let her enjoy the fairy tale. She probably thinks being invited here means something." Tinsley leaned against the counter. "Careless now. Once we get the house signed over, William and I are moving states, far from this charity project." My hand gripped the pantry shelf. Not in shock, in clarity. This wasn't ignorance. It was intention. They were waiting, playing polite until they got what they wanted. The house James and I built with our bare hands. The one filled with memories, love, baby footprints on the hallway wall, and the quiet music of a family that once felt whole. I stepped out, slowly, not making a sound. Tinsley looked up, startled, lips parted. I didn't say a word, just filled my glass with tap water, took one sip, and left the room. Let them wonder what I heard. The next morning, I found them on the porch, Tinsley and William. She had her hand on his chest, fingers curled just so. A gentle gesture, but one meant for power, not affection. She leaned in, speaking softly while he nodded distant. I didn't want to interrupt, but I also wasn't going to hide anymore. "William," I said, stepping out. He looked up startled. "Ma, did you sleep okay?" "Fine," I replied, though the mattress was hard and the night harder. Tinsley smiled tightly. "We were just talking about the future. So many things to plan." I looked at her hand, still on him, possessive. "I imagine," I said calmly. "The future always gets louder when the past is still." William shifted uncomfortably. "Tinsley thinks we should move closer to her parents," he offered. "They have more connections." I studied my son. He looked like James in that moment. Same jaw, same way of avoiding pain with logic. But James never would have left me behind. Not like this. I reached into my bag and took out a small photo. One of William at 12, standing proudly with a hammer in his hand, helping James build the porch we now stood on. "Do you remember this day?" I asked. William held the photo, eyes softening. Tinsley tried to peek, but I gently turned it toward him only. "This house has a heart," I whispered, "and you were part of its every beat." Then I walked away, leaving the photo in his palm. Let him decide what it meant. I was in the garden pruning the roses James planted the year William was born. The autumn wind was soft, but carried a chill, the kind that sneaks into bones, not skin. Tinsley appeared behind me, quiet steps in expensive heels. "You like to stay busy, don't you?" she said. "I do," I replied without turning. "Things grow better when they're tended to." She crouched beside me, too close. "William said you're very attached to this place. I understand. It's hard to let go." I looked at her, really looked. Her hair was perfect, her smile rehearsed, but behind her eyes was calculation. She reached out, fingers brushing the chain around my neck. "This is lovely," she said, touching the locket. I gently pulled away. "It's personal." She paused, her smile frozen. "Of course," she said. "I just think some things belong in the past, don't you?" I stood up, wiping my hands on my apron. "Sometimes the past is all that keeps the present honest." Tinsley straightened her blouse. "You're strong, Mrs. Rose, but strength can become stubbornness. William deserves to move forward." I nodded slowly. "And you deserve to be exactly where you belong." She tilted her head. "Meaning?" I looked at her shoes. "Too clean for soil, too delicate for roots." "Meaning we'll both find out soon." She didn't follow me back inside. The roses swayed gently behind me, as if they'd heard everything. That evening I found one of Tinsley's silk slippers lying crooked on the hallway rug. It was James's rug, a gift from his uncle, carried across the country in the back of a borrowed truck. We'd laid it down together the week William was born. It had seen diapers, spilled soup, first steps, and grief. Now it lay under Tinsley's heel print, careless, out of place. I knelt slowly and picked it up. Soft, expensive, but hollow, like most things she touched. As I stood, I heard voices behind the door to the guest room, low, urgent, William and Tinsley. "She's holding on to that house like it's her tomb," Tinsley hissed. "You need to talk to her before the will gets complicated." "She's still grieving," William replied. "It's been years, William. We need a life that's ours, not hers." I closed my eyes. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. And it didn't shock me anymore. What hurt was hearing his voice soften under hers. James had raised him to protect what mattered, and here he was, folding. I left the slipper on their bed, neatly placed. Then I walked into my room, opened the drawer and pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying. Worn, sealed, legal. But more than that, it was final. Not yet, but soon. Let them make their plans. Let them underestimate me. A storm doesn't announce itself. It just arrives. The next morning I found William alone on the porch steps, nursing a cup of coffee like he used to as a boy, hands wrapped tight around it, staring into nothing. I sat beside him without asking. We watched the wind stir the leaves. Silence stretched between us, but it didn't feel empty. It felt tired. "I remember when you painted that fence," I said, nodding toward the crooked post he'd once insisted on fixing himself. He smiled faintly. "I used too much white. You said it looked like snow in August." I chuckled softly. "I didn't mean it unkindly." "I know," he whispered. "We sat there like that. Mother and son, not enemies, not strangers, just two people standing on the edge of something they hadn't named yet." Then I reached into my coat and handed him the envelope. He stared at it. "What is it?" "You'll see," I said. "But don't open it yet. Not until you're sure you still remember who you are." He held it carefully like it might break. "Ma, what are you doing?" "What I should have done a long time ago," I said. "Giving you the truth, the whole of it, not just what makes everyone comfortable." He looked down, ashamed. "Tinsley means well." I put my hand on his. "This isn't about Tinsley. This is about your spine." He didn't speak, just held the envelope like it had weight, because it did. And the wind carried the scent of rain. Later that afternoon, Evelyn asked for tea. "The proper way," she said, smirking at my chipped kettle. I brought out the set I'd saved for decades. Porcelain with faded roses, a wedding gift from my mother. The cups weren't perfect anymore. A crack on one handle, a stain beneath another. But each piece held history. Hands, stories, moments. Evelyn picked up a cup and turned it in her fingers. "Charming. Very vintage," she said with the same tone one uses for a flea market trinket. Tinsley chuckled, sipping without a thank you. I served them both, steady hands, quiet pride. Then I sat opposite, watching how they occupied my table like they were born into it. Evelyn leaned back. I assume you'll be downsizing soon? This place must be a lot for one person. I met her gaze. It is, but every room still knows my name. Tinsley sighed. We just think. I raised a hand. Don't, not yet. They fell silent. I wanted them to stew in that stillness, the kind of silence that carries memory and muscle, the kind they didn't understand. I glanced at the window, where the garden moved with the wind. My garden. James's hands were still in that soil. And I realized then, it wasn't they who didn't belong. It was me, in their version of my life. But not for long. Evening had settled like a shawl across the house. I was passing through the hallway when I heard Tinsley's voice behind the study door. Low, sharp, hurried. No, not yet. She's still holding on to it. But I'll wear her down. She's old. They break eventually. She laughed. I stopped. She continued, unaware I was just a breath away. Honestly, if William doesn't get it done, I'll just push for power of attorney. She can't even manage the bills anymore. I felt my pulse in my ears. I don't care if she hears me, she added, almost singing. She should be grateful we're even willing to keep her near the property once it's ours. That word, grateful, hit me harder than any insult. I stepped back, not into shadow, but into something deeper. Resolve. She hung up a minute later, heels clicking across the floor. I didn't move. I waited until the sound vanished into the kitchen, then entered the study. The room smelled of dust and secrets. I sat in James's old leather chair and pulled the envelope from my bag once more. I placed it squarely in the center of the desk, under the paperweight he loved, the one shaped like a sparrow in flight. Let it wait. Let it hum quietly until it was time. She thought I was brittle, but she didn't know that some women don't break. They calcify until they are stronger than stone. It was a quiet dinner, just the three of us. The others had gone out for some social event Evelyn insisted was not appropriate for everyone. I didn't mind. The silence gave me space. William sat across from me, pushing peas across his plate. Tinsley was beside him, scrolling her phone under the table. Her nails tapped like a clock, ticking louder than her conscience. I used to make this casserole every Thursday, I said softly. Remember? William looked up. With extra onions. I used to hate that. I smiled. You did, but you ate every bite. He chuckled, for real this time. No nerves, no pressure, just memory. And for a flicker of a moment I saw my boy again. Tinsley didn't look up. You two and your casseroles, she mumbled. William reached across the table, tentative, and placed his hand over mine. It was warm, hesitant, honest. Ma, I read the envelope. My breath held. He continued, voice low. You didn't have to do that. Split it. Give me so much. After everything. I looked at him carefully. You say that now, but will you still feel that way when it's no longer just paper? Tinsley finally looked up. What envelope? She asked. Neither of us answered. William squeezed my hand, not hard, but sure. I'm sorry, he said, for forgetting who raised me. My heart didn't leap. It exhaled. Tinsley stared at him like she didn't recognize the man sitting beside her. Maybe she didn't. That night, I returned to the guest room they'd prepared for me. Small, cold, tucked away from the rest of the house like an afterthought. The bedspread was stiff, the pillow too high. No photograph, no books, not even a clock. Just a lamp with a flickering bulb and a vase of fake flowers. Tinsley had chosen it. She once told William, loud enough for me to hear, "It's better this way, less emotional clutter." I sat on the edge of the bed, removed my shoes, and stared at the wall. They thought they were putting me in my place. But what they didn't understand was, I had lived harder nights. I had slept on floors beside hospital beds, eaten toast for dinner so William could have fruit. I had worked with fevers, held in tears, stitched clothes with bleeding fingers. This room was an exile. It was a reminder of how far I had come and how far I was willing to go to protect what James and I had built. I opened the locket again. Inside, folded behind the photo of young William, was a slip of paper. James's last message to me before he died. Protect the house, protect the boy. It wasn't just land, it was legacy. And Tinsley? She'd put me in this room thinking she'd won. But the real power in a house isn't the one with the deed. It's the one who remembers every nail, every breath, every sacrifice. The next morning, I made breakfast. Not out of duty, out of habit. Bacon crisp, eggs just the way William liked them, and biscuits like James used to beg for on Sundays. The scent filled the house. Tinsley walked in wearing silk and suspicion. Her nose twitched. "You cook now?" I didn't answer. I just placed a plate in front of William, poured coffee into the chipped mug he used as a teenager, the one with a faded baseball logo he'd once refused to throw away. He smiled at the sight of it. "You kept this?" "Some things are worth keeping," I said. Tinsley sat slowly, her plate untouched. "I prefer almond milk," she muttered. I handed her the sugar bowl. "I prefer respect." William choked on a laugh. Not cruel, but honest. Tinsley's smile cracked, just a hairline fracture. "I hope we're not playing house," she said. "Because decisions need to be made. Grown-up ones." I nodded. "You're right." I reached into my sweater pocket and pulled out a second envelope. Smaller, newer. I placed it gently on the table between the salt and the coffee. Tinsley stared at it like it might explode. William didn't touch it. "This," I said, "is the final version. Everything decided." "What does it say?" she asked, her voice tighter now. "You'll see. Tonight, when everyone's here." The room fell into silence, and this time I let it sit. Because sometimes silence isn't absence, it's authority. By sunset, I had set the long dining table myself, not for show, for truth. Each plate held a folded linen napkin, real silver, crystal glasses, the old china with blue rims we only used on anniversaries. James's seat at the head remained empty, but the chair gleamed, polished, as if he'd arrive any second. William and Tinsley arrived late. She wore red, sharp, striking, the kind of color people wear when they expect to win. William looked like he hadn't slept. He paused when he saw the table. "This is formal," he said. "Truth deserves a proper setting," I replied. Evelyn came too, uninvited but unsurprised. "Finally," she sighed, sitting before I could offer. "Let's make this quick." I placed the envelope at the center of the table. No fanfare, no speech, just stillness. "This," I said, "is the final deed transfer. Witnessed, notarized, filed." Tinsley leaned forward, eager until I added, "And it names William the sole heir to the house." A beat. "But," I continued, turning toward my son, "with a clause. You do not get full control until I pass. Until then, I live here, alone. This house, my memories, my garden, remain mine." Tinsley's face froze mid-blink. Evelyn scoffed. "You're serious?" I looked her dead in the eye. "James built this house with his hands. You think I'd let strangers bury it in marble and mirrors?" Tinsley tried to speak, but words failed her. "Respect isn't given at a table. It's earned under its roof." Tinsley didn't scream. She didn't throw the glass or storm from the table. She smiled. That kind of tight, furious smile that hides something far sharper than rage. "Well," she said, lifting her wine, "it's touching, really, how you've clung to this place like a museum exhibit. But don't mistake sentiment for strategy." I said nothing. She leaned closer. "You're a relic, Lillian, a symbol of a past everyone else has moved on from." The word hit me harder than I expected. Relic. Old. Useless. Just something to be dusted and kept in the corner. I looked at William. His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. Not yet. I reached into the drawer beside the table and pulled out a photo album. Thick, frayed, filled with fingerprints and crumbs from years gone by. I opened it slowly, turned the pages, and stopped at a photo. James holding newborn William, sweat on his brow, tears in his eyes. Behind them, the unfinished wall of this very house. I slid the album across the table toward Tinsley. "This house isn't a relic," I said. "It's a heartbeat. And unlike you, it remembers everything." Her eyes flicked to the photo, then back to me. For once, she said nothing. William finally broke the silence. "I remember that wall," he whispered. I placed my hand over his. "And it remembers you." Tinsley's smile cracked, and something deep inside me settled. She followed me into the hallway after dinner. Tinsley. Her heels hit the floor like a gavel, fast, precise. Her voice trailed me before her footsteps did. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You think one piece of paper and some dusty memories can keep me out?" I didn't answer. I walked. She caught up, grabbed my arm. Not hard, but firm, desperate. "You're not smart, Lillian," she said. "You're just old. You mistake guilt for power." I looked at her hand on me, then at her face. Then I reached up, calm, slow, and held out my hand, palm open. She frowned. "What?" "Your ring," I said. She looked down. Her engagement ring, the one James had passed down to William, was gone. "Where is it?" she demanded. I didn't flinch. "You left it on the bathroom sink. I put it away." Her eyes narrowed. "Give it back." "No," I said gently. "I'll give it to someone who understands where it came from, who understands what it cost." She stood frozen, lips trembling slightly, not from fear, from the terrifying realization that something had slipped from her grasp. Not just a ring, control. "I've let a lot slide, Tinsley," I whispered, "but not the memory of my husband." Then I turned, left her standing in a house she never truly entered, a house that now knew the difference between ownership and belonging. Evelyn was already at the front door when I came down the next morning, coat on, purse clutched like armor. She turned at the sound of my steps, eyes scanning the hallway one last time. "Lovely home," she said, voice smooth as cream, charming in its old-fashioned way. I didn't respond. She glanced toward the staircase, toward the rooms she'd never been invited into. "You've held on to it well, I'll give you that. But things don't stay sacred forever. Not in this world." I walked past her, opened the door. The light outside was gentle, gold spilling over the porch like an old hymn. "You're right," I said. "Nothing stays sacred, unless someone decides it is." She stepped outside, heels clicking against the wood James sanded down by hand 30 years ago. Then she paused. "You really think you've won?" she asked. "That Tinsley will just walk away from this?" I looked her straight in the eye. "She already has." Evelyn squinted, unsure. I held up a small manila envelope. Inside, the ring, wrapped in tissue, and a letter addressed to William. I didn't say what it contained. She didn't ask. But as she turned to leave, she looked over her shoulder, just once. And for a flicker of a second, I saw something in her face I hadn't expected. Not defeat, fear. Because she finally understood. She had played games with money. But I had protected something far more powerful. Memory. That evening I called William into the garden. Just the two of us beneath the soft rustling of the maple tree James planted after his father passed. I handed him the envelope. He opened it slowly, fingers trembling. Inside, the ring, gleaming softly in the fading light, wrapped in the tissue paper I used to tuck into his school lunches, and a letter, handwritten in James's script. He read silently, eyes moving over each word like they carried the weight of time. When he looked up, he wasn't the man lost between two women. He was my son again. "He wrote this before he died?" he asked, voice raw. I nodded. "He wanted you to have the ring, but only if you gave it to someone who would honor where it came from." William stared at the ring in his palm, I don't think I've earned it yet. Then hold on to it, I said. Not as a symbol of love, but as a promise to become the man your father believed you could be. He didn't speak, just folded the letter, placed the ring back inside the paper and held it to his chest. I reached over, smoothed a strand of hair from his forehead like I used to when he was small. In that moment, we weren't mother and adult son. We were just two souls bound by memory and the quiet decision to begin again. Tinsley was gone by morning. No note, no explanation. Just the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway and an empty closet that had once held dresses too expensive for the life she claimed to want. William told me over coffee. He didn't seem angry, just hollow. She said she needed to clear her head, he muttered, stirring his cup too long. That maybe we weren't compatible. I said nothing, not because I lacked words, but because I knew this silence was one he needed to fill on his own. He finally looked at me. Did you know this would happen? I met his eyes. I knew who I was dealing with, I said softly. But I needed you to see it for yourself. He nodded, slowly. And there it was again, that flicker of shame in his gaze, like a boy who realizes he wandered too far into the woods. Was she ever good to you? He asked. I took a breath. She was polite, and politeness can mask cruelty better than hate. He nodded again. Then he reached across the table and held my hand. Not out of apology or guilt, out of recognition. He saw me now, not as a burden, not as a relic, but as the mother who had always been there, quietly holding the walls upright, while others tried to redecorate over the cracks. The house felt warmer that morning, even with one less heartbeat inside it. A few days later, I went out to trim the hydrangeas by the front gate, the ones Tinsley once called old-fashioned and overgrown. Mrs. Layton from across the street waved from her porch. "Lillian, I heard the guests left. Peaceful again, huh?" I smiled. Quiet has its own beauty. She crossed over holding a tin of cookies. "Made too many," she said, though we both knew it was an excuse. Her eyes searched mine gently. "You all right?" "I am," I said, with more truth than I'd expected. She nodded. "I always wondered how you managed with her around. Never once saw her help carry groceries." I chuckled. She didn't know the weight of anything that didn't shine. Mrs. Layton lowered her voice. "We all saw how she treated you, Lillian. We didn't want to meddle, but we felt it. That struck something in me. For years I'd carried the silence like armor. But to know it had been seen, even from a distance, made something loosen in my chest. She's gone, I said simply. And your son? Still finding his way, I said, but walking a little straighter now. Mrs. Layton smiled. That's what mothers do, right? Hold the light until they remember how to walk towards it. I looked at her, really looked. Another woman who had known her share of long days and cold coffee. I nodded. Exactly that. And the gate creaked behind us. Not from age, but from the breeze of something finally lifting. That evening, I stood at the door of the master bedroom, the one I hadn't stepped foot into since James died. For years I kept it closed, a shrine, a sealed memory. Tinsley once joked it was morbid, said we should turn it into a guest suite. I never answered. But now the house was mine again, not just in paper but in presence, and I knew it was time. The door creaked open slowly. Dust floated in the golden light like spirits that never left. James's coat still hung behind the door. The bed was neatly made, untouched. His book lay on the nightstand, still open to the page he never finished. I sat on the edge of the bed and let my hands rest on my lap. The silence wasn't heavy. It was holy. I reached under the bed and pulled out the wooden box, the one he built in his final months, hands shaky, stubborn as ever. Inside, his journal, a bundle of letters tied in ribbon, and a small velvet pouch. I opened it. Inside was a necklace, simple gold, with a charm shaped like a house. Not for beauty, for meaning. A note lay beneath it. For Lillian, In case the house forgets, remind it who built it. I held it to my heart. The house hadn't forgotten. Neither had I. And now, with the doors open, the ring returned, and the silence no longer sorrowful, I could finally grieve in peace. A week passed. The house settled into its quiet rhythm again. Old pipes humming in the morning, wood groaning in the night like it was stretching after years of holding its breath. I woke early, drawn by a scent through the window. Roses, James's roses, the ones we planted the spring after William was born. They were blooming, too early for the season. The air still cool, mornings still foggy, but there they were, full, wild, unapologetic. I stepped outside, barefoot on the dewy grass, my robe brushing the tops of weeds I hadn't pulled yet. The petals glowed soft pink in the pale light, like they were lit from inside. I reached out and touched one. It felt like forgiveness, not from Tinsley, not from William, from life itself. William joined me a moment later, mug in hand, sleepy-eyed. "They shouldn't be blooming yet," he said. "They don't know the rules," I smiled. "They just feel the warmth and rise toward it." He looked at me. "Not just into. I'm staying," he said. "For now. I want to fix the shed, paint the porch, start over." I nodded. The house remembers who built it. It'll remember who comes back to tend it. He crouched beside me, fingers brushing the soil. The air was still, sacred, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a woman trying to hold on to what was lost. I felt like a woman who had let go and found what mattered remained. A week after she left, a letter arrived, addressed in Tinsley's handwriting, sharp and slanted like her voice used to be. I opened it alone at the kitchen table, beneath the ticking clock James once repaired, using nothing but a knife and a shoelace. Inside, only 2 lines. "No hard feelings. Hope you're well. T." No apology. No acknowledgement, no reflection. I folded it once and placed it in the drawer beside the fridge, the one where we keep batteries and warranties and things that might matter someday but never do. I didn't feel anger, just confirmation. Some people walk through your life like wind, loud, disruptive, but unable to stay. They rattle windows, shake doors, but they don't touch the foundation. I looked around the kitchen, faded cabinets, mismatched mugs, the dented pot I used to boil soup when William was sick. All still here, all still mine. I placed a fresh daisy in the small glass by the window. It tilted toward the sun without hesitation. William walked in, wiping his hands with a rag. "Mailbox okay?" "Fine," I said, smiling. He opened the fridge. "You want me to make dinner tonight?" I paused, surprised. "You cook now?" "I'm learning." We both laughed, and the house laughed with us, creaking, groaning, warm. I looked at the drawer where Tinsley's letter rested. Then I let it stay closed. Some words don't deserve space on your table. That afternoon, William asked me where the old paint cans were. "The ones from Dad's shed?" he said. I pointed toward the cellar and followed him, curiosity tugging at my heels. He pulled out the rusted cans, opened one, and smiled. "Still good." Then he walked to the back hallway, the one James had started to repaint the month before he got sick. A pale patch still stood out from the rest of the wall, like a breath held too long. I watched as William dipped the brush and began to fill it in, carefully, reverently. "You were 10 when he painted that," I said. "I remember," he replied. "He let me try a corner. I ruined it." "He let you think you helped anyway." William paused and looked at me. "Why did you never finish it?" I touched the trim with my fingers. "Because every time I thought about painting over it, it felt like letting go of the last thing he touched." William nodded. Then he kept painting. With each stroke, something in me softened. Not grief, that never fully leaves, but the sharpness dulled, made room for breath. When he finished, we stood back. The wall was whole again, and somehow so were we. "You did good," I said. Think Dad would be proud?" I smiled, resting my hand on his shoulder. He already was, and for the first time, the hallway didn't echo. It embraced. I found the radio in the attic, tucked in a dusty box labeled James's stuff. It hadn't worked in years. The knob was stuck, the dial foggy, the antenna bent like an old man's spine. Still, I carried it down like it was precious. William saw it and raised a brow. "That thing still alive?" "Let's find out," I said. We placed it on the kitchen counter, right where it used to sit. James would tune in every Sunday morning to that jazz station, humming along as he fixed the squeaky hinges or flipped pancakes. William fiddled with the knob, wiped the dial clean with his sleeve. Static, then crackle, and then music, soft trumpet, slow bass, the kind that makes your soul sway before your body does. William looked at me, eyes wide. "You hear that?" I nodded, tears catching in the corner of my eye. He'd say the house knew we needed it. We stood there in silence, just listening. The kitchen felt smaller somehow, cozier, like time folded gently around us. "I didn't know you kept this," he whispered. "I kept everything that mattered," I said. He didn't respond. Just took my hand, gave it a squeeze, and let the music say what neither of us could. We didn't dance. But the air around us did. And for once, the ghosts in the house didn't haunt. They sang. That night I left the porch light on, not out of habit, out of hope. It used to be James's tradition. Whenever William came home late, no matter how old he got, that soft yellow glow would be waiting. It meant, "You're loved, you're safe, you'll always have a way back." After James died, I kept the tradition a while. Then slowly the light stayed off. Not because I stopped waiting, but because I stopped believing anyone was still coming. But tonight, something felt different. William had just come back inside from walking the dog, a mutt from the shelter he'd named Duke. He kicked off his boots, smiled at me and said, "Feels like home again, doesn't it?" I looked at the doorway behind him, at the same frame where James once leaned, arms crossed, watching the world unfold. "It does," I said. He disappeared into the kitchen to heat leftovers. I turned off the hallway lamp, but left the porch light burning. Its glow spilled across the old rocking chair, touched the roses by the step, painted a soft golden trail on the path James laid stone by stone. Outside, the wind carried no warnings, only peace. Inside, the house breathed with quiet rhythm, and I realized this wasn't just a house that had survived betrayal. It was a home that had chosen who belonged. The light stayed on, for memory, for dignity, for every mother waiting to be seen. The next morning, I opened the old recipe tin, the one with the loose latch and faded label that simply read, "Ma's Magic." Inside were decades of dinners, birthday cakes, and comfort foods. Each card handwritten, some smudged with gravy or butter, corners curled like tired fingers. I pulled out the cornbread recipe, James's favorite, and held it for a moment, remembering the way he'd sneak the crispy corner piece before anyone else got to the table. William entered the kitchen. "Smells like memory in here," he said, teasing gently. I handed him the card. "Think you're ready?" He studied it like scripture. 3 tablespoons bacon drippings, he said, eyebrows raised. "That's the soul," I smiled. "Don't skip it." He laughed, tied on the apron, my apron, and began measuring, mixing, tasting. I watched from the table, heart full, because this wasn't just about food. It was about passing down what couldn't be put in a will. The rhythm of home, the taste of belonging, the scent of a life lived with intention. When the cornbread came out, golden and steaming, he tore off a piece and handed it to me. I took a bite. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that was enough. Across the room, the old radio hummed again, and the house, my house, didn't just feel full, it felt grateful. That afternoon, I went to fix the back window, the one in the laundry room that always stuck halfway, as if resisting closure. I had asked Tinsley once if we should replace it. She wrinkled her nose. Why not just board it up? No one uses this room anyway. But I used it. For 30 years, I folded shirts there, stared through that window at the clothesline, swaying like prayer flags in the wind, watched William chase fireflies across the yard. The window mattered. I pushed at it now gently, and for once, it slid shut without resistance. William entered behind me, holding a basket of clean towels. It finally gave in, I said. Or maybe, he smiled, it was just waiting for you to stop asking the wrong people to fix it. I looked at him. Not a boy, not the man who once forgot me in a room full of strangers, but a son, mine, trying. He placed the towels down, opened one, and began folding. Not fast, not perfect, but with care, like someone rebuilding from memory. We worked side by side, in silence. The kind of silence that only comes after truth. Outside, the wind brushed the trees. Inside, the old window reflected our hands moving together. It had stayed open through storms, snow, and years of neglect. But it had waited. Like me. Not for repair, for respect. And now, finally, it closed. Not with force, with peace. Evening settled like an old song. I stood in the hallway, staring at the key hook by the front door, the one James made from a plank of cherry wood and 5 rusted nails. Only one key hung there now. It was mine. Tinsley once demanded a spare set. For emergencies, she claimed. But I never gave it to her. Something inside me, quiet, deep, had whispered not yet. Now I reached into the drawer and found James's old spare, still on the leather fob he'd carried since our first apartment. Worn, warm from memory. I turned to William, who stood nearby, dusting off a bookshelf. Come here, I said. He came. I placed the key in his hand. You can make copies now, I said, for whoever you trust. He looked down at it like I'd just handed him a family heirloom. I don't deserve this yet. You're earning it, I said. Day by day. Not by apology, by presence. He nodded slowly, fingers curling around the key. I won't give one to anyone who doesn't understand what this house is, he said quietly. Good, I replied, because it's not just wood and stone. It's heart, I smiled. And for the first time, I saw that same steadiness in him I once saw in James. The hallway was dim, but the key, held tight in my son's hand, caught the light, and that was enough. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary, sunlit, with the kind of breeze that makes curtains dance. William had gone into town for supplies. I stayed behind, watering the porch plants, the ones Tinsley once scoffed at for being too common. I heard a car engine pull up the drive, and I knew. Before I even turned around, I knew it was her. Tinsley stepped out, immaculate as ever, but something in her posture had changed. Less edge, more hesitation. She approached slowly, eyes scanning the house like she was seeing it for the first time. I forgot my necklace, she said. The one I left on the dresser. I nodded, walked inside, retrieved it. A delicate gold chain, beautiful but cold. I handed it to her on the porch, no words. She reached for it, then paused. I thought I'd feel more when I came back. I said nothing. She glanced at the rocking chair, the roses, the freshly painted trim. He's staying, isn't he? Yes, I said. A pause. He used to talk about this house like it was magic, she murmured. I never understood why. I looked her in the eye. Because you never listened when it spoke. She held the necklace tightly. I won't be back. I know. Then she turned. No goodbye, no apology. Just soft steps back to her car. I watched as she closed the door. Not slammed, just closed. Like someone who finally understood she didn't belong. And that was enough. For years, the small room at the end of the hall had been locked. It used to be William's. The first one we ever painted. yellow walls, blue trim, stars glued to the ceiling with sticky fingers and wild dreams. After James died, William never went back in. And after he left home, I couldn't bring myself to open it. It held too much. But now, with Tinsley gone, the house humming again, and the hallway full of life instead of silence, William stood beside me, key in hand. "You sure?" he asked. I nodded. He turned the lock slowly. The door creaked open like it had been holding its breath all these years. Dust floated in the light. The old toy chest was still there. So was the crooked poster of the baseball player he swore would be his future. The window was cracked, letting in a sliver of wind that smelled like autumn and forgiveness. William stepped inside, fingers tracing the bookshelf, the doorknob, the place on the floor where he once spilled grape juice and cried because he thought the stain would ruin the house forever. "I was so small in here," he whispered. "We all start that way," I said, stepping in behind him. He turned to me. "Let's clean it up. Make it something again." I smiled. "Not something. Let's make it ours." And as we opened the windows, the room exhaled, like it had been waiting all along. It was the little things that told me he was coming back to himself. The way he fixed the leaky faucet without being asked. How he stopped checking his phone every few minutes. The quiet hum he let out while sweeping the porch. James used to do the same. But it was that morning, over coffee, when it truly landed. I poured his cup, slid it across the table like I'd done 1,000 times. He reached for the sugar, then paused. "Thanks, Ma." It stopped me cold. He hadn't called me that in years. Not since Tinsley started referring to me as your mother with that tone. The one that made even love feel like a burden. I looked at him, and he looked back, not realizing what he'd just given me. A name, my name, the one that meant something. I smiled, blinked away the warmth in my eyes, and sat down. "You're welcome, son." We sipped in silence for a moment. Then he spoke again, voice softer this time. I should have said it more. "You just did," I said. Because sometimes healing doesn't arrive like a storm. It slips in during breakfast, wearing old socks and tired eyes, calling you Ma like it never stopped. And in that quiet kitchen, with the radio low and the light warm on our faces, I felt something rise in me I hadn't felt in a long time. Home. Not the house. Him. One afternoon, I heard the squeal of hinges. Not from protest, from relief. I stepped outside and saw William crouched by the front gate, wrench in hand, the latch freshly oiled and shining in the sun. The same latch that had stuck for 2 years. The same one Tinsley claimed was too old to bother fixing. He didn't see me at first, just kept working. Steady, focused, quiet. When he finally looked up, there was grease on his cheek and a boyish grin I hadn't seen since he built a treehouse with James and nearly nailed his shoe to the floor. "Caught you," I said, arms crossed but smiling. He shrugged. "It's been bothering me. Thought I'd take care of it." I walked over and tested the latch. Smooth, effortless. No screech, no fight. "You remembered how?" He tapped his temple. "Muscle memory. Dad made me fix it once after I slammed it too hard. Said, if you break it, you learn to mend it." I laughed. He said that about everything. William leaned on the gatepost and looked at me, eyes soft. "I broke a lot more than this gate, Ma." I stepped closer, placed a hand over his. "But you're mending." He nodded. "And I'm not done yet." The wind lifted through the trees, carrying with it the sound of peace, not silence, not absence. Peace. And this time the gate didn't resist. It welcomed. Autumn had deepened. The wind carried gold and rust, and the trees bowed in quiet surrender. The house felt fuller, not with people, but with presence. One morning, as I folded the laundry, I heard it, the creak of the front door, that same door where Tinsley once blocked my path with a fake smile. The same door that watched me carry groceries, hope, and humiliation without anyone offering a hand. I walked slowly to the hallway, and there was William, holding the door open for Mrs. Layton, who'd brought over soup, just because. He smiled, guided her in like a gentleman born from memory, not instruction. When she left, he stood by the door a moment, gazing at it. "I never realized how much this door sees," he said. "It remembers everything," I replied. He reached up and rubbed the frame. "It used to stick. Still does sometimes, like it knows when to let people in and when not to." He looked at me, serious now. "Ma, I want to stay, for real. Take care of the place. Take care of you." I nodded, no words. Instead, I reached for the door and closed it gently. No slamming, no resistance, just a soft click, like punctuation on a chapter that finally made sense. And then he opened it again, this time not to leave, but to live. And in that simple act, everything changed, because the door that once shut me out had been claimed by hands that finally understood its weight. The garden was never grand. It wasn't filled with exotic flowers or sculpted hedges like Evelyn's, but it was ours, tangled, honest, alive. That evening, I walked its narrow path with a cup of tea in hand. The sky had turned to velvet, and the last light of day rested softly on the roses. James's roses. William followed a few steps behind, rake in hand, Duke trailing him like a quiet shadow. "I think the soil's ready," he said. "We could plant some more for spring." "Your father used to say the same thing," I replied, touching one of the blooms. "Every autumn, he'd believe in spring." He crouched beside a bare patch, dug his fingers into the earth. "Feels right now. Feels steady." I nodded. The garden didn't look perfect. Some blossoms had fallen early. Some hadn't bloomed at all. But they were there, rooted, weathered, beautiful in the way truth always is. I sat on the bench, the old one James carved initials into when William was a boy. Across the yard, the porch light flicked on. "Leave it," I said. "Let it stay on tonight." William looked at me, then up at the soft glow, and he understood. Because some lights aren't reminders, they're promises. We didn't say much after that. Just sipped tea, watched the roses, and let the dusk wrap around us like forgiveness. That night, I didn't close the curtains. I let the porch light spill into the hallway, casting long shadows that felt less like ghosts and more like memories stretching their arms after a long sleep. William had gone to bed early, not out of fatigue, but peace. The kind that settles deep in a man's chest when he finally returns to the place he first learned how to breathe. I walked the house slowly, barefoot on worn wood, hand gliding across the wall James once painted, the doorknob William once struggled to reach. Everything felt exactly as it should. Not perfect, present. In the kitchen, the old radio still hummed, a soft crackle of jazz melting into silence. I stood at the window and looked out. The porch bathed in amber glow, the garden resting, the stars patient above it all. The light stayed on, not for who might come, but for what had returned. Respect, truth, dignity. I touched the locket around my neck, not with grief this time, but with gratitude. James would have been proud, not just of the house, but of the boy who came back, the mother who stood firm, and the peace that took its time but never forgot its way home. And as I turned off the radio, I whispered to the night, respect isn't inherited, it's earned, day by day, word by word, hand by hand. The house exhaled, and the light stayed on all night.